Hi everyone, it's Jerry here with a video guiding you through all you need to know about the fellowship of the Higher Education Academy that you can get as part of your PGCert. First of all, I know we have talked about this, but it was about a year ago now, back last September. What is HEA Fellowship? Well, this is the Higher Education Academy, who are the sort of professional body of teachers in the HE sector, and they offer a kind of lifetime fellowship, and that is a kind of professional qualification, right, as opposed to the PGCert, which is academic. Now, you could liken this to, say, a kind of guild of higher education teachers, or a kind of professional certified body of plumbers or something. It's that kind of professional status. Now, BIM is looking to increase its number of fellows of the HEA, but this is an international qualification. Okay, so particularly Australia, some places in Hong Kong, it's increasingly being looked at as a mark of excellence in higher education. And essentially, you can get this for free. Ordinarily, this would cost you £500–600, and there's a whole kind of external review process you'd have to go through. Instead, you could kind of nip this in the bud and get a free extra qualification as part of your PGCert. Sold, hopefully. The rest of this video is going to be explaining how we then do that. So, how do you get fellowship? Well, firstly, you do have to pass your PGCert. That's the non-optional bit. And as you know, you have 2 sets of module assignments coming up. So that's PGO2, Linking Theory and Practice, and PGO3, Action Research Project. Alongside that, to get your fellowship, you'll need to complete what we call a Claim for Fellowship, or CFF, form. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec, and we'll have a go at completing one. But essentially, it's just a short Word document that is drawing on the evidence and some of the kind of narrative that you're giving within your module assignments. The deadline for all of this is 30th of September, which is when you're handing in your module assignments. However, I say this quite slyly, your fellowship is not graded. Okay, it's not kind of plumbed into the PGCert really. As you know, you have a week deadline after the kind of original submission where you can be capped, up to kind of 10% of your mark. Because fellowship isn't graded, it can't be capped. So if you wanted to take a little bit extra time, potentially focus your efforts now on your module assessments, and then once you've submitted, look at this fellowship form, there really isn't anything stopping you do that. Great. Let's just have a look at what we have to do then. Hopefully this will give you enough to work with, and enough to make a decision on whether you want to approach it. Lovely, so this is the Claim for Fellowship form, nice and colourful. You'll see we've got our name, I'm Phil here, clearly, and your candidate number, you should know where this is. It's the string of letters, numbers before the @ in your student email address. And then the rest of the form is essentially a series of boxes for you to insert evidence according to the HEA criteria, and their criteria, as you'll notice, is basically just the UK Professional Standards Framework. So we have the areas of activity, the things that an HE teacher needs to do. We have the things you need to know about, the core knowledge. And then further down, of course, we also have your professional values, those things that you have to think and care about. So, okay, if we continue and sort of think about how we fill this in, here's one I've done earlier. I've got some evidence that I've drawn from. It's not actually from a PGCert piece of work, this is from a kind of recent paper that I did on sociology of knowledge in education. So maybe it's a bit dry and a bit meta here. This is relating to subject material, K1. So this is knowledge of your own discipline, your own profession. In my case, this is education, but for you, this will be music business, songwriting, etc., etc., etc. So, as you see, what I've done is I quite literally have just plonked a paragraph here, directly copied from another document. In your case, you're going to be drawing from your PGCert 1, 2 and 3 module assignments. So you can go all the way back to, the first assignments you submitted as part of this course. What I've done is I've introduced this section with a short preamble that's just, linking and highlighting how this piece of writing demonstrates my knowledge of the subject. So in this case, this is kind of breadth. This is me showing an awareness of different theories of knowledge in the field, and I sort of talk a little bit about comparing them below. I've got another example here that's from Carl Mayton's legitimation code theory. So this is kind of a deep example. This is showing my understanding of one particular theory. Again, I've got some kind of more narrative parts here, and then me digging into how this part of the theory operates. Great. So let's kind of take it forward. Let's think about how we would fill this in specific to your PGCert. Well, you could approach this in a couple of different ways. Knowing that we're drawing from a module assessments, you could start here and kind of just go through the form and think, okay, well, first I've got to demonstrate how I design and plan learning activities, maybe also whole modules or courses. So, which modules have I talked about that? I can then dive into those assessments and I can bring out pieces of evidence. Okay, next, when have I been talking about my teaching? Okay, the other thing that you could do is you could go straight to the source. So, for example, you could just open up your action research project. I've got one here. This is one that's about kind of self-awareness, self-regulation, in terms of the practitioner's self-awareness, how that influences their teaching. And I could kind of scroll through the document and see what strikes me as something that would be evidenceable. Typically, we're not after things that are overly descriptive. We don't want you to just kind of tell us what you think. We want you to show us. So let's think, maybe something about the research setting. Yeah, you can tell I've already thought about this paragraph. Okay, so this one, we're talking about two particular factors of the research setting, how they develop to the kind of project. First of all, we're talking about autonomy, bringing particular issues. Second, the idea of role-taking, personal agency. So from my memory, this is sort of talking about how students learn. It's talking about the factor of autonomy being important for learning, or student role, student agency, all those things, how students relate to one another. Okay, so I could have that in as my main piece, and then I could, give my preamble. If I can spell excerpt, no, can't spell today. Do you see, I really couldn't find any evidence that was hitting that A4, talking about developing effective learning environments, approaches to student support. Well, I might actually want to just note here that this relates to a few different places. Do you see what I mean? So you could have a really big juicy paragraph that relates to a few different parts of this document. You're more than welcome to tell us that up front. Okay, great. Let's look at another example. I've got a quality enhancement essay here, as you can see. I think this is a really good example of what we would not want. Okay, so the reason we wouldn't want pieces of writing like this are that this is kind of just you telling us what you care about. It's important to me that I embrace the need for quality enhancement. That sounds great. On the face of it, that sort of sounds like a professional value, doesn't it? Using evidence-informed approaches, maybe. Informing my continuing professional development through quality enhancement. It sort of is, but again, what we want you to do is we want to see how those values are coming out into your actions. So this could be the start, potentially, of some of that claim, but it certainly wouldn't be the end of that claim. So let's see. Okay, let's have this in. Let's copy that. Make my kind of narrative. Well, let's say this is kind of drawing from PGO2 quality enhancement essay. Great, we can make this a bit more formal. You can say this relates to 3 because blah 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 blah. And again, I do actually think, you know, this kind of is not just evidencing a value. I would say this is also talking about some specific methods for how we evaluate our teaching. You know, feedback, questionnaires, etc. It's also kind of talking about quality enhancement, quality assurance, because some of those are institutional practices as well. So you can see how you'd start to make links all the way across the document. Good, so hopefully that's helpful for you in terms of seeing how this would be carried out. I just want to highlight a few different things as we go through. The areas of activity should be quite unproblematic. You'll have loads of examples from those. Yeah, the places that might trip you up. Appropriate learning technologies. So within this, we are not just looking for you putting documents up on Moodle. We're not just looking for the fact that you use slides. It doesn't have to be digital learning technologies. You know, this could be other forms of tech in terms of, you know, maybe in theory, maybe in production, etc. But we're wanting to see how you're using technology to get students learning more than they would do otherwise. So, you know, this could be stuff about online questionnaires from your research. This could be kind of quizzes. This could be discussion forums, all this different sort of thing. It could be about your use of email or your use of slides, as long as you're making it very clear that you're using these things intentionally. You know, thinking from your module assessments, not all of that might be in there. So you might have to, you know, put the evidence from your module assignments in this box and then give us a bit more reflection here that's giving some of that background about what you wanted to achieve, you know, why it was good for learning, what happened. Great, we've talked about values. Finally, at the bottom, you will see there are a few other boxes. So, honestly, these boxes you will probably have achieved by the time you get to the bottom of the document. So, D2.4 asks you to engage in the areas of activity specifically related to your teaching. I can't think of anyone on their PGCerts that wouldn't be talking about those areas of activity outside of teaching. Again, if you haven't, just kind of make sure you're doing it. You can add some more in this box for sure. Secondly, incorporate subject pedagogic research into your practices. Again, hopefully this will be really evident from the examples that you draw on, but you could put a bit more description here. And finally, your engagement in your continuing professional development. Again, you know, when we're talking about specifically A5, engage in continuing professional development, that should have given you an awful lot to work with. Great. Okay, so hopefully that's been helpful to explain the process that you'll go through in order to complete your form. Let's talk about some next steps. So firstly, do keep up the work on your module assessments. They're the main target. This fellowship process can come slightly afterwards. I think it's slightly secondary. However, do, you know, feel free. You could start transferring evidence into your claim for fellowship form now, if you kind of, you know, want to break from some of the module writing. But also be open to leaving it a bit. Give yourself some headspace. You are more than welcome to book in either tutorial or email feedback. Rich Harvey, who's one of our internal reviewers for the HEA, is more than happy to field these, so please get in touch with Rich. And then finally, you'll be submitting your CFF form with, or maybe slightly after, your final assessments, and that will be another Moodle submission point. Okay, so it's going to be on the PGO2 module page, and it's not going to be in the same place as your linking theory and practice submission. It's just going to be next to it. Great. Hopefully this has been comprehensive. Any questions on the above or anything else related to the HEA, just drop me an email. Brilliant. Good luck.